Good Sunday morning. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and welcome to this week's Community Focus. Joining me right now is Marcus Roth, and he is the spokesperson for the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
The Supreme Court recently came out with a ruling that cities can actually fine people that are homeless for sleeping out in public, which is something that got a lot of pushback from the public because homelessness isn't really something that people choose. And when they don't have anywhere else to go, then it is just the public. So, kind of speak to this issue from your organization's perspective.
Well, we submitted a brief in opposition to the city of Grants Pass's position. Um, Grants Pass is a small city in Oregon that really started cracking down on people experiencing homelessness, arresting, ticketing people, which just at a basic level is doesn't make any sense. You're not going to be able to to just ticket somebody that has nothing, living on the street. You're not going to, first of all, you're not going to get them to pay a ticket. And second of all, you're going to make the situation a lot worse for them. And third, and maybe most importantly, if you're a city leader, this is only going to make the problem worse. When people have a criminal record after, being arrested and ticketed for sleeping outside, you have a criminal record, try getting an apartment with finding a landlord who's going to accept you for an apartment in the future with a criminal record. It just makes it exponentially harder. People get out of jail after a few days or however long they lock them up, and then where do they go? They're still homeless. So it does nothing to address the problem. And really, there's quite a bit of research that shows that this approach, this what essentially the old-fashioned approach that was tried, during the beginning of the homelessness crisis, the modern homelessness crisis, it's really kind of started in the 80s. This is kind of what a lot of cities initially did, and found that, oh, this isn't really working because of the reasons I just described. So it's kind of a step backwards, and it's an expensive approach. There's a lot of research that shows that it actually costs more when you add up all the costs for police enforcement, for clearing camp encampments, for locking people up in jail, for the court costs, for all the emergency services that it is going to take, when people have to cycle in and out of the emergency rooms, ambulances, all those costs end up costing more than just housing people. And housing people and providing services to keep them stably housed, to help them overcome the challenges that led to their homelessness in the first place, is cheaper than just locking people up and, cracking down on homeless encampments. So for all those reasons, we took the side in opposition to Grants Pass and in support of a more sensible approach to ending homelessness.
And it's just
But
very interesting, though, to also look at this from the perspective on the outside of how they even got to that being the solution. Because, again, at the end of the day, the solution for someone who's homeless is just staying awake or be fined. And on top
yeah,
of that, we have known that people that have committed crimes, they are sometimes really put into a fast track to homelessness. How many more people could we see becoming homeless as a result of this?
yeah, we're concerned that cities around the state are going to see this as a more viable option now. But we also see it as an opportunity to really reach out to the cities around the state, many of whom are taking a more sensible approach and really are prioritizing housing as opposed to jail. But we the problem that we're facing right now is that there is such a shortage of affordable housing in every city, in Toledo and Columbus and Cleveland, Cincinnati, and all the smaller cities as well. There's a huge shortage of affordable housing for people. So moving people out of homelessness and into housing is getting harder because of that. And to get to your point with the affordable housing shortage that we have and rents skyrocketing at a pace that we've never seen in the last several years, um, that is causing more homelessness. The lack of affordable housing really is the primary cause of homelessness. So when the shortage is as bad as it is, there's more people falling into homelessness. Um, and in fact, the homeless system overall is housing more people than ever. But because there's more people becoming homeless than ever, it's basically not keeping pace. So you're seeing the numbers of homelessness increase, in particular, what's called the unsheltered homelessness population. And those are folks that are living outside on the streets and often in encampments that are highly visible. Um, I think when that when the number of people living outside, visibly outside, increases, there's kind of a public backlash. Business owners don't like it. It's not good for anybody. I mean, we don't want people to be living outside either. Being housed is clearly the best option for everyone. So politicians often face kind of a backlash from the local populace and business leaders and stuff. Do something about the homeless crisis. Um, and the most, well, I think short term, easiest thing to do and most publicly visible sort of response to have is, let's clear the encampments. Let's make it pass these laws that are going to make it illegal for people to sleep in the public parks and things like that. So I think the problem is it's politically expedient. It looks like you're doing something. It's public and it's quick. The actual solution is long term, and it faces upfront costs of for developing housing, for the services that you need to be able to keep people housed, and all those things. It's a harder slog, even though it's cheaper in the long run, and certainly more effective and undoubtedly more humane. So that's kind of the choice that city leaders now have. Do we do the thing that's really the best for our population? Do we do the thing that's best for the most vulnerable members of our population? And do we do the thing that's really going to solve the root problem, the root cause of the problem, that's, the lack of affordable housing? Or do we just look forward to the next election and, make it look like we're getting tough on this problem and solving this issue, even though we all know that busting up encampments and arresting people is really just moving the problem from one place to the other.
And maybe this is just me being my cynical self or a bit dramatic, but it's almost as if the system is, I don't want to just say broken, but it's just slowly falling apart. Because you would think with just how wealthy our country is, that we would be much more advanced in addressing this issue. And it seems like we really haven't made enough progress.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly a matter of priorities. I think after so many decades of this homelessness crisis, I mean, I was your age or younger in the 80s when it was, really exploding, and everybody's like, wow, where are all these people coming from? And the system, the homelessness response system has evolved over this many years since then, and has become pretty effective with the resources we have in getting people housed. And like I said, the system is housing more people than ever. The problem is that the kind of what we call the pipeline of people becoming homeless is increasing so much faster. The lack of affordable housing is the primary cause of homelessness, and housing has just gotten so much more expensive in the last couple of decades. So in terms of priorities and our political leaders' response to this issue, it's pretty anemic in terms of what we put towards housing people that need help compared to a lot of other priorities. So, you know, what we see is, and again, I think comes back to the fact that politicians want to look like they're doing something rather than, that the way our political system operates, it kind of prioritizes highly visible, short-term, you know, PR kinds of I don't want to call them solutions, actions versus, long-term real solutions. So that's the challenge, is to help political leaders understand that, there is a more sensible, cost-effective, and humane approach to addressing homelessness. Fortunately, I know, city leaders in Toledo have, they understand that. I think Toledo has been pretty good about, taking a more progressive approach to homelessness, and most of the larger cities around Ohio as well. But there are always that competing, uh, you know, the competing priority that some local leaders have, that they want to just make it look like they're doing something, even if they're not, you know?
And one thing I'm glad you touched on was that the system is housing more people, because when you
Yeah.
have more people experiencing homelessness, it's going to be harder to house more people. Do you think that people are actually putting in the effort to explore this issue and understand that it's more complex, or do we need to do better as a society?
I mean, I think we certainly can do better as a society, helping everyone understand the kinds of pressures and the differences that, our country in particular is, the safety net compared to a lot of comparable other countries, I think is pretty thin. So, if you have some challenges, you're not born to a nice upper middle class wealthy family, or, you know, you're African American, you're a woman, if you have a disability, or if you're a senior, those are all things that make it harder, because you don't have the same family members and friends that willing to help you out when you fall in hard times, right? You generally, for example, people of color in particular don't have the same wealth that the white American population has. So, when something happens, you get, horrible in a horrible accident, and you have, you know, big hospital bills, and you can't, keep going to work. You don't have parents that can, come in, basically help you out. You have parents, but they might not have the financial means to help you out, right? So, um, people like me, I think, are more fortunate in that, and I recognize that. I think that a lot of people in my situation don't recognize that, though, and see it as a personal failing, and that is, a mentality, I think, that is, well, I think it's wrong and short-sighted, but it's also hard to fight against. So I think that's kind of what we're up against, in terms of helping people see things from a different perspective, and that, a lot of people don't have the same advantages, and something that might just be kind of a minor setback for, people that have a strong support network, can mean the difference between, being housed and being homeless for somebody that does not have that same strong support network.
What do you hope comes out of this ruling? Because obviously, this is going to be a setback for organizations like yours that have made progress in trying to find alternative solutions. So, what do you hope
Yeah.
comes out of this?
Well, like I said, I mean, I do see it as an opportunity to engage with local city leaders, around the state, uh, that might be thinking, oh, this new ruling came out, so, maybe we should, like, broaden our approach to the homelessness issue. Um, so I think what we plan to do at Ohio is engage as much as possible with city leaders, local leaders, and people, legislators at the state level as well, to make the case that addressing the root problem, the root cause of homelessness, makes a lot more sense financially, and in terms of addressing the actual problem in the long term, than, doing the short, easy, but inhumane and, ineffective, option that the Supreme Court just gave them.
Well, Marcus Roth, spokesperson for the Coalition on Homelessness and Housing in Ohio, thanks for joining me.
All right, thank you, Jaden. Really appreciate your time and interest in this subject.
And that's this week's Community Focus. I'm Jaden Jefferson, and have a great week.